So, welcome to the podcast, Kendall North. Your business is called Deeply Nourished, and you're a holistic dietitian. Tell us about you and who you help.
Okay, so I have been a dietitian for many, many years, and it started for me growing up in a large family of girls on a farm. And I was always so curious as to why my sisters were slim and I wasn't. And at that time, and of course, all of the societal messaging and the family influences, weight was a real focal point, and how I developed my own attitudes and beliefs around food and my body. And I went on an exchange when I was 15, came back when I was 16, and I gained heaps of weight. And of course, that wasn't very nice as a 16, 17-year-old. And that was where my weight loss journey began and my curiosity. So rather than go down, I always loved food. Like I just was really drawn to food. So rather than sort of going down the chefing line, which I had originally sort of thought, I sort of changed my focus. And I was like, I really want to learn about food and nutrition. And basically, like at that stage in my head, I was like, why am I the chubby sister?
Yeah.
So that led me into studying at Otago Uni with a Bachelor of Science in Human Nutrition, and then I went on to do my dietetic degree. So yeah, and so before I answer that second part of your question,
Yes.
I think that was like 20 years ago, and a lot's happened since then. And in my 20s as a dietitian, I was a dietitian. I was doing really well. I was a group fitness instructor. Everything was great, but I was just so disillusioned with myself and my own journey. Like having all of the knowledge in the world and being active, it just created so much internal angst, anxiety and pressure to look and be a certain way. And on top of my already underlying issues that I had started to develop from when I was a teenager. Right. And so it just showed that, all of the knowledge in the world isn't enough to complete or live a life, happy in your body and maintain a really good balance in your weight and overall health. Yeah. Yeah. And so I went on, I had children, and that was really challenging. And then after that, I actually added in a degree in education at Victoria and taught health and food and nutrition at high school. And I was like, okay, there's a couple of cogs there. I've got nutrition, the expert in nutrition, education. And then I was like, shit, there's still things missing. So I went and did a professional coaching course. Yeah. And so really that started that whole momentum of behavior change.
Right.
Yeah.
For you personally?
For me personally, yeah.
Yeah.
So once I had added in all of those things, I then have received really intensive mentoring to help work through all of my journey to be able to do it for others. Yeah.
Wow. And so then did that end up changing how you work with people?
Absolutely, because not only was I just
right?
Yeah, well, I was so disillusioned with myself. That was one of the reasons I sort of, and you, of course, you have children, and your whole life gets turned upside down anyway. So sort of coming into that new phase, I was like, actually, being a dietitian isn't in the model that I had learned, wasn't fulfilling. It wasn't robust enough for what I knew that needed to happen in order for someone to get the full transformation of their life, not just focused on body.
Right. Because there was other layers that you were seeing that weren't being addressed from your original training as a dietitian.
That and absolutely, but also that the humanistic model is a complex model, and we know that most things are sort of 80% mindset and behavior, and that's the missing cog as to how people can move from getting educated to actually doing the behaviors that enable them to live a healthy life.
Yeah, because there's like that gap. It's like a void that we have to somehow jump over. And so we know all that information in the world doesn't necessarily lead to sustained behavior change.
Yeah, and I was living proof of that. And I felt, so disillusioned professionally and personally. And so it was not until I came back with a fresh with a fresh perspective, and having done my own personal work and working again with clients, particularly women, really looking at this stuff through a whole new lens.
Wow, I'm really like feeling into how robust you as a coach must be to have that mindset piece that you've worked on more recently, as well as your own journey, and then that very evidence-based, strong background as a dietitian.
Yeah, absolutely.
Huge.
Yeah.
All right, we've got lots to get into. This is exciting.
So much. This is like the craziest topic that, is so conflicting and so massive. Exactly. Yeah.
So when we're so obviously my audience is midlife women.
Yeah.
And you're a midlife woman, right? So
yes.
So tell us a little bit about where you're at with your personal journey.
Yeah. So I've got two children and they're 10 and 9. Sorry, 11 and 10 now. And so my personal journey where I'm at now with my health and well-being is really unpacking, or having unpacked, all of the, for lack of a better word, bullshit attitudes and beliefs that I'd picked up along my journey, and to then put them down. And so now, because basically when you hit, perimenopause, like you've got essentially, if you haven't dealt with all of the stuff lurking, and you haven't processed all of those things of the decades before, then in perimenopause, when, physiologically your body starts to change from having its whole purpose around procreation to then moving forward into that next step. It's like, well, what does that look like? I don't have to look or be a certain way to attract the right partner to have babies and be okay and safe. But what do I want this next phase of my life to look like and feel like? Because perimenopause is so challenging. And of course, like for me, it's mood. When those levels of estrogen start fluctuating, it's looking at health as a whole, especially for me, that I can develop or have developed the tools and the strategies that don't crash me off course, that enable me to work through those feelings and emotions and poor behaviors to be able to keep going.
So that's a really important piece, because you talked about when we move into perimenopause and this sort of broader phase of midlife, physiologically our body's going from this drive, whether or not we have children, but this sort of biological drive in a way to procreate, to something else that's beyond that.
Yeah.
And so then our body function changes, but our mood changes, in the way our brain works changes, and our values and our drivers are changing as well. So it's like this massive overhaul in perimenopause. It's no wonder we lose our way.
Absolutely. And so women come to me as a dietitian and go, Kendall, I can't control my weight. And it's like, okay. Yeah, and that's a huge driving force, because of course, societally, we have learnt that in order to be loved and safe and secure, we need to look and be, a certain way, or look a certain way. And so, which is very, very challenging.
Yeah. And how fantastic. So when women come to you and they say, Kendall, I've put on weight, I can't lose weight, it doesn't matter what I do, it's not budging, right? We hear that so much in midlife. What do you say to them? Where do you start?
Where do I start? Yes. So, okay, right, Meg, I want you to think of pimples. And especially in perimenopause, I went through a phase, I think it was more where I was getting this cystic acne. Have you, what do you do when you squeeze a pimple or acne? What happens?
It makes it worse.
It makes it worse. Yeah.
Yeah. You focus on it. It goes all red.
Yeah. It's painful. It gets worse. And it goes gross and yucky and So does squeezing the pimples stop the pimples from coming back?
Definitely not. No.
No. And so when I talk to women, it's like, if It's like a pimple, like weight's like a pimple. If you focus on it and using all of the old ways in which you've tried to control your weight in the past, then it's just going to make the problem worse. Because in saying that, weight is a problem and it is an issue for women. But, there's two things. It's about looking at the core of the issue, the core of the problem. What is the core issues of having pimple breakouts? What's the core issues of you being out of balance with your weight? And so there's sort of two things that I focus on, and looking at the systems in which women have used historically to control their weight. So unpacking all of their thoughts, feelings and emotions and beliefs around food and their bodies, and looking at ways they can create new dialogues. And so that's sort of the first thing, because that's growing up in our era, like you think of like our grandparents were on cabbage soup diets, parents were on Weight Watchers, we're on keto and fasting, and what are our kids gonna do?
Be doing.
It's just it's just the same cycles reinvented over and over again through diet culture. Yeah.
And when I'm putting myself in those shoes, right? I'm going to Kendall North, she's a holistic dietitian, and I just want to lose weight. Right? I'm in midlife. You're my answer. You're going to tell me what to do, what actions to take, and I'm going to lose weight. And then you come back to me and say, well, it's a little bit more complex than that.
Yes.
Obviously you're framing it beautifully for women, because this is the work that we need to do. I wholeheartedly agree. All of the weight and beauty standards and what it means to be a woman and all of that kind of stuff is wrapped up in diet culture. Is that like a massive kind of learning curve for your clients? Or are they like, right?
Because because women, like I've got a 70-year-old woman at the moment, she's had her whole life of dieting. I mean, she's come to me because she just doesn't want to do it anymore. And so, it's really looking at unpacking and not erasing, but addressing all of those behaviors, those thoughts, and all that education, and reteaching her what is important for her body, and coach her through how to implement that. Because essentially the second thing of the problem is women have got underlying unmet needs, and women, we are so dedicated throughout the decades of our life in that procreation stage to serve others, to give and love and do everything for anyone else. When women come to me, it's like, I need to work on myself. Like, it's about me now. And, and it's about tuning in. It's about stopping and tuning in to what you really want and what you really need to move forward in that next phase of your life.
Hugely. See, I'm really interested from a practitioner point of view, because I think I get women coming to me in my work where they're realizing that they're like, there's something deeper I need to do. And I wonder if you get women coming to you and they're a little bit more, I just need to shift my weight and then I'll be okay. And then this whole door is opened for that midlife kind of transition and journey.
And that's pimple popping. I pimple popped my whole life. I pimple popped in my profession, and it's, and so, yes, it is absolutely common. And it's thinking, well, what am I missing? What do I need to work on? And when it comes to nutrition, nutritionally, at the end of the day, women have gone decades or years of undernourishing. Because if you're in that diet cycle, so you've got a weight issue, so then you go on a diet, whatever it is, or you do some sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Intervention. So whatever intervention somebody does, is going to have these rebounding issues, right? And so for women, it's like they all of a sudden they take away food. They're not nourishing their body and their mind. They go into that whole focusing on the negatives rather than the positives. they get cravings, and they get that rebound effect of cravings and binging. And then, of course, constipation, gut issues, headaches, poor mood, grumpy, poor sleep. And all of these issues just snowball out of control over the course of these years. And so then, got the snowball that explodes at the bottom of the hill. And then so they look up to the top again and then start again on something new. And they're stuck in that cycle. Yeah.
It feels so disheartening, doesn't it?
Oh, it's just awful. And so no matter what it is, it's like, actually, how do you get out of that cycle? Stop popping pimples and focus. And so with nutrition, helping women build a really strong scaffold of nourishing food as a baseline, because I guarantee that if women actually start to give their bodies what they require nutritionally, then they're not going to have those rebounding effects of mood and hunger, which drive them to compulsively eat certain foods. You think about, like, if you have dinner, if you actually eat a really nourishing dinner, you don't want a whole massive big dessert or a block of chocolate.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I remember early perimenopause, because those physiological changes, I would have breakfast, I would have second breakfast, I'd still be hungry at 11:30, I'd be having third breakfast and then lunch. And it just went on and on like that. And I had no understanding of what you said around the foundational, getting those structures in place of really good nutrition, because we've been so indoctrinated that if you want to be healthy, in quote marks, right, and lose weight, then just eat less.
Absolutely. Eat less, move more. It was, that tagline.
Yeah. And then we end up exhausted, moody, falling asleep, eating all the sugar and all the carbs in the afternoon so I can just get a bit more energy. It's that sort of endless cycle.
Absolutely. And then, because a woman, the biggest struggle that women have is crashing at 3 o'clock.
Hello.
Yeah, exactly.
That's me.
And you think, as a woman, like, what you need to do between 3 o'clock and bedtime.
Yeah,
it's huge. And if you haven't fueled yourself well and really taken care of your body, then essentially your body is hungry. It doesn't want slow burning, healthy sources of carbohydrate and lean protein and vegetables. It wants sugar and carbohydrates, because it feels it thinks it's under threat, right? So it goes back to the fundamentals of actually taking care of your body, because once you have focused, it's like, you think of a waterfall. Think of the waterfall in Pukekohe Park. How many times have you seen bubbles, get put into the waterfall? We don't start taking bubbles out one by one. We start to actually sort out the water supply and flush it out with good food. Because if you're flushing it out with good food, automatically the food that you rely on, dissipates away.
Yeah, exactly. And then for me, life became more simple once I sort of sorted out my breakfast. And then maybe sometimes my lunch would be sorted, but my breakfast would just sustain me through the day. And it took a few weeks to kick in, but it really got there. So so a counter that I'm hearing in my mind, putting myself in the shoes of a woman who would like to lose weight, and I'm one of those women that's put on, well, I don't weigh myself, but a significant amount of weight in menopause.
Yeah.
And I come to you and we're talking about this, and this is great. You're wanting me to eat more food and more nutritious food and get that thing going. My brain is still saying that, well, I'm not going to lose weight. I'm just going to put it on.
Yeah.
Because we have all of that conditioning. How do we unwind that as women?
Yeah, that's a huge one. And it's a process. And I think, and I'll answer that. But first of all, we're conditioned in those cognitive distortions, essentially, to do everything perfectly. Like, we're perfect women. We do everything perfectly. We don't make mistakes. And so and that happens with nutrition, is that people you think, okay, I want to lose weight. And traditionally, people will then go and follow a diet plan that has a certain amount of calories with a certain amount of protein and whatever else. But it's too fast. Our body, our physical body, and our mind are not built to make changes quickly. And so like you said, you started with breakfast. And when people come to me, if I see them in one session, like they'll get something out of it, but I don't know how they're going to respond after they change their breakfast. And so that's why it's important when you get mentorship and coaching to actually get support in order to overcome the other rebounding issues that may arise. When you've changed one thing, it's always going to offset or change another. So when you had changed your breakfast, what did you notice?
I noticed that I wasn't hungry at 10:30. I had better energy in the afternoon, and then overtime. So that's been with me for months and months now, the shift. I just feel more nourished, like I'm not craving carbs all the time. It's pretty boring because I can't eat eggs. So it's like, well, but it's just the same every day. It's made a massive difference to me.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And that's the thing, I guess, because you had that level of consciousness and drive to want to be reflective and to look at how you change and evolve with your breakfast and what that meant for you and what you could do to progress. Whereas most of the women who are so stuck in that mentality of A plus B equals C, do this and do this, and you're going to get this outcome. When we know that that's not how it rolls. Or maybe for a short time, if you do A plus B, you might get weight loss outcome, but where we know that that's not sustainable.
Yeah.
And so you implementing that slowly meant that your body and your mind had time to actually adjust to the changes rather than
so I've done the old midlife keto diet thing, and I think I'm a little bit ashamed to admit, but I even bought some scales, because there was like weighing yourself every day. This is a few years back. Jesus, I just don't want to be focused on food all the time and measuring out half a cup of this and a half a cup of that and knowing what I'm like. I have got far more interesting things to do.
It becomes an obsession, right? It becomes an obsession rather than a skill that you've built into your whole toolkit.
Yes.
And I've got a girl who's done bodybuilding, and I've just got her to chuck out the cup that she uses to measure her food, because it's just and it's just the small wins. And so it's behavior change, knowing that that's the cog which gets everything revolving in the right direction. That's the cog which takes the most work.
Yes.
Because at the end of the day, like we know what's healthy and what's not. But most people come and say, but I can't do it.
Yeah. And I also, this is just opening up so many doors for me, Kendall, because I'm thinking about when I did that little keto thing, I became focused on my weight, and that became the issue that I was really focused on. And if I can just lose some weight, then I can fit into these jeans and blah, 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 blah. But since I've just sort of made that simple shift around my breakfast, and it has been months now, I notice I can bring in more exercise, that I like the weights, like I have more energy for that. It's not such a struggle, and it has been a huge struggle through menopause to want to do that.
Absolutely.
And then, like you said, that slow scaffolding is starting to happen. So really reflecting on what you're saying and finding it really useful for myself.
Awesome. Because the scaffold, like we use the Te Wharatapa Whā model, the 4 dimensions of well-being, and that they're all interrelated. And what's good, if you can get your physical body and eating and sleep and nutrition sorted, then you're going to have positive rebounding effects of more energy, positive mood, exercise, sleep, and it goes on the positive, positive rather than spiral down.
Exactly.
Because with our bodies, like when the focus becomes on weight and we're pimple popping and it just gets worse. Because weight can still be a health goal, but it's not the goal that's going to get your butt out of bed to make yourself a good breakfast and be active. And so women I see, it's like, what is beyond weight? So in this new season of your life, okay, so we look at their bodies and their relationship with food and unpack all that, really give gratitude to what your body has done for you to this point, even when we wreck it. We try to wreck it and sabotage it, and we're mean to it, and we talk to ourselves horribly and all of those sorts of things. Actually, what our bodies have done for us, and then pick a new focus as to what we want from our bodies in the next season of our life. And for most women, when I sit down and really get to the nitty-gritties through coaching and looking down through the layers, women want to be happy, healthy. They want to be able to eat and enjoy food. They want to be able to walk up the mountain, play with their grandkids, not get an illness that stops them from doing all of those things. Like, that's the essence of life.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. And then I'm thinking, well, you're helping your clients to connect to that. And then that's such a deeper why than I want to lose a few kilos. I want to fit back into those jeans or whatever it is.
Yeah, which is and when people have that anxiety, that frantic anxiety over wanting to lose weight quickly and get into the jeans, it's about coming back and using those techniques of mindfulness, meditation, breathing, whatever it is that people do to bring yourself back and calm your body, calm your brainstem, get out of fight, flight, freeze mode and going to a conscious state, going, will starving on one hand, or will eating a block of chocolate take me closer to my goals, my actual deep goals, or further away from my goals? And so it's working through the ickiness of those big emotions that cause people to impulsively make choices one way or the other.
That ultimately don't serve us.
No, that don't serve us, that just keep us in that weight loss cycle.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful, because I think there's maybe a perception for women that either I'm going to need to diet to maintain a good weight or find a good weight, or I just let it all go. And, whatever. And that's a sort of a collapse in what I see. I wouldn't say that's acceptance.
It's like one way or another.
Yeah.
Which is really sad, isn't it? Because us as women, we've got so much more to give and so much more life to live, beyond 40. There's that old cliche, life begins at 40. Yeah. And it's because you can learn to have a whole new appreciation for your life and what you want. Yeah.
And I have found, though, that it, from that sort of 45 to 50 age, that life begins at 40. Yes, but we sort of have to unpack all of those belief systems and all of that templating that we've had from most of our parents and grandparents, that actually life just kind of gets smaller and smaller the older that you get. So that's I call it an act of rebellion, because we're saying no to that. And I hear that in your work as well.
Absolutely, because once you say no to all of that rubbish, how freeing is it? Like, it's so unbelievably freeing for you to feel empowered to choose. It's like, I choose this. Like, what do I want to focus my life on now? Do I want to die focusing on my weight?
Yeah, exactly. Huge lessons there. I watched my mum go through that diet for all of her adult life until she, 6 months before she passed away, and she finally reached her desired weight, but that was because she was sick. It was terrible.
Isn't it just terrible? So soul destroying.
Yeah. So what for our women who maybe in perimenopause or early menopause, they're like, well, this is all well and good, Megan and Kendall, you're talking very beautifully philosophically, but I haven't got energy to drag myself through the bloody day. What do I do? Where do I start?
Yeah, that's a good question, because, again, women come to me and they're like, I'm confused about what I should be eating.
Yeah.
I don't know who to listen to, and I certainly sure don't know where to start. And that's, of course, like when I see women, and of course I'll speak broadly, but, like I do, and I'm sure you do too, I know you do, as, really that first session, it's about listening and about getting a really good understanding of, someone's lifestyle, their medical needs, their their history, and around, around food, and helping them understand where they want to go. So that's the first thing, is that really looking or having a reflection on. Journal's good, like an actual journal. Sometimes I just get women to journal, their thoughts, their raw thoughts and feelings and emotions, writing down all of those old core beliefs around food and their bodies, and then giving appreciation, of course, and then looking at, what they want for their body. So that's the first thing. It's mostly mindset. But then with nutrition, it's, of course, I do a very comprehensive nutrition assessment, and it's about like, okay, so you've got, we start here and we want to come here, and we've got obviously all of these stepping stones, and it's about helping women understand to stop. What's the next logical step that you can take? Small step to stop you from trying to leap so far that you're going to fall into the water and have to get back out and start again. And it's education around the process, because this is new for people. This is so new. Like knowing that me telling a person what they should eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner and snacks is not essentially what women need. It's about going, what is the first nutritional thing that you need to do that's going to have the biggest impact on your life, so that you can then start to figure out the course of action that you want to take. And that's kind of cutting through that overwhelm. I'm sure you see the woman with overwhelm. So I don't know if that answered your original question, but
it does. And but it also highlights for me what a massive shift in perspective and mindset that takes. So like you said, lots of education around that, and that it's actually quite radical, because we get all of these marketing messages around, just do this diet and you'll lose your minnow belly, just take this supplement and you'll whatever lose the weight, and so it's a real shift around that. Can you give like a concrete example of what one of those small steps along that journey might look like for one of your clients?
Yes, let me think. So an example would be a woman came to me and completely and utterly overwhelmed with food and dieting, no energy to do anything other than exist and get kids to bed. And isn't it interesting? I think of one example and then all of a sudden I start to think about all my clients. I'm like,
they're all coming in.
Exactly. I'll give you this example that's on the top of my head, is that she wasn't eating, she was fasting and she wasn't eating breakfast. And so the very first step is regular meals for women. Women don't like being stressed. If we're starving, our cortisol levels are shooting through the roof and things don't go well. So the first thing is regular meals. So for her, it was like, right, we need you to start, how do you feel about having breakfast? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, what do you feel comfortable? She goes, I don't have an appetite. I doesn't, whatever. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's cool. Remember that little stepping stone. I was like, what would you feel comfortable? Oh, also knowing that she's an avid dieter, calorie counter, control over food. It's like, what could you manage for breakfast? And she was like, I could manage the cereal that I normally have with some milk. I can't remember what brand it was. And I was like, okay, well, so that's, I said, is there anything else that, you feel like you could manage? She was like, oh no, I think that's enough. Of course, there was other elements at play. And so she went away and she implemented her breakfast. And as we put in those stepping stones, those concrete stepping stones over time, because I deliver this in coaching packages, so that I'm there holding hand, giving tools, strategies, resources, so that eventually my clients can go a happy way on their life and do it themselves, right?
Yeah.
So over time, she was like, okay, right, my breakfast isn't keeping me full now. So then we worked on the quality of her breakfast. And then so you can see that it was all just scaffolding up. So breakfast and her coffee wasn't serving her. And then we started to increase the quality of her breakfast. And then like you said with you, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I feel I feel more energized at morning tea time. I'm not relying on more cups of coffee and the biscuits from the cookie jar at work or whatever, or you're not in the fridge or at a cafe eating slice or whatnot. And then you think, okay, I've got more energy. Oh my gosh, okay, well then I'm not as starving for lunch, so I can then sit down and eat my lunch, and then in that process just continues. So you're constantly adding in elements as to what is most important to the client and is going to have the biggest impact, the lowest hanging fruit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah. Rather
Beautiful.
than going, right, you have this for breakfast, this for lunch, this for dinner. Okay, yeah, I'll see you in 3 weeks. That doesn't work.
Why doesn't it work, Kendall?
It doesn't work because none of those rebounding issues are accounted for.
Yes.
So someone might have what they call a perfect breakfast, but then it might cause them to, they might have gut issues from it, or they might get constipated, or they might be too full at lunch and then not have lunch, or they might not be able to afford it, or they might have something happen and they can't prepare that food that day, or they've decided that they're going to have fish for lunch every day, and then all of a sudden they don't like fish anymore, and then they're like, sure, well, what do I do now? And so again, it's teaching women the flexibility and their eating. And teaching women to make the best choice in the situation that they're in, and that being enough.
Love that. Yes, because I'm thinking about what is the first thing that we do if we think about wanting to lose weight? We drop food items. We try and not have the cake and the chocolate and the this and the that, and we bring in the salads and all the rest of it. Punish.
Punishing our body into submission is just hurting it. Because then when you fail and not perfect, then you beat yourself up.
Yeah.
And goodness knows, like when women start to really tune into their thoughts, because remember, our thoughts elicit emotions, and emotions elicit behaviors, or then really when you go back to it, it's like, why am I binging on a block of chocolate when I've just said to myself that I don't want to have chocolate because I want to lose weight?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's going back to the drawing board. And of course, like I'm not a therapist, a psychologist. I work on positive psychology principles. It's like, what can you add in rather than focus on taking out?
Got ya.
Yeah.
And I think what that is doing is empowering us to be able to nourish our bodies for the rest of our life, rather than rely on this diet plan that Kendall gave me that I have to, adhere to. Otherwise, I'm having all of these guilty thoughts and shame and internal punishment.
It's just like being dictated to. And you know what? Like, I haven't really met anyone who really loves to be told what to do.
It's not just me then.
And so people like to be told what to do around food because it's one less thing they have to worry about. But that, of course, I've mentioned it a lot of times, is that doesn't account for actually the unmet needs that are going on below the surface, which is actually when you've gone through this course of nourishing and this new phase of your life, like, what do you actually want out of life, your day-to-day life?
And those are questions that we need to take time with and really look at. And I think for a lot of women, we just haven't had time to look at it. We've maybe got married, had children, had a career, or whatever, some parts of that. And the what do I really want has been way in the background.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it seems so simple, but it's how amazing is it as a person, when you're doing the work and you're on the journey, to actually have the ability to tune into your body and listen to what it's telling you.
Massive, isn't it?
It's just massive.
Yeah.
It's massive. And when you go into that flurry and that deprivation weight panic, and you drop everything in order to get a certain outcome of weight, and you're depriving yourself of other love and connection through food, through having the energy to do the things that bring you joy and calm, whether it be exercise or walking outside, or having, when you go into that deprivation panic of being moody and hangry and raging at your kids or your partner, or fights, your relationships go downhill, your sleep's upset. And that's, of course, that whole te whare tapa whā, one thing goes, one side of the wall goes, then the other, it becomes a really unstable structure.
Well, Kendall, you have given us so much to think about, and I'm also very aware that we've really just scratched the surface.
I know.
But it is, I firmly believe that this is our task in midlife, and it is, if we do this work through whatever lens, like working with yourself, working with me, we are on the path to liberating ourselves for the rest of our life.
Yeah.
And that's just so huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is there anything we have not spoken about that through this conversation there's something you really want women to hear?
Oh, I want women to hear, and I want women to understand that when you release yourself from being the victim of expectations and release yourself from being the victim of having a poor relationship with food, and you do feel liberated, even if you do have weight issues or you are carrying a bit of extra weight, that stuff becomes, I won't say irrelevant, but that stuff doesn't become the focus, and on the other side of that is life. On the other side of that is life, I would say. So I guess just the message is that if you are or have experienced, weight issues, or you have a poor relationship with your body or food, you're feeling overwhelmed, confused, and you don't know what to do, who to listen to, where to start, then please get in touch with myself or you, because the other process that I've learned is that it doesn't matter where the journey begins. Myself or you or some other practitioner will be a stepping stone that moves you closer to the next stepping stone of being able to access what you need.
Yeah, love that so much. So how can women get in touch with you if they want to spend more time with your wisdom or indeed work with you?
So I've actually got a brand new website that's being created at the moment, and on that website I've developed and developing huge amounts of resources for people to be able to access to get them started, no matter where they are at in their life or budget or whatever. So that's coming, and that'll be www.deeplynourish.co.nz. On my social, I've been a bit quiet on my actual socials because I wish there was more hours in a day. And sometimes, to be honest, I put way too many hours into social media last year and not enough time and energy into creating this stuff. So I've really tried to balance that myself so that so I've got some group programs coming up. So there's lots of different ways I can be accessed. But if someone wants to reach out, just look me up on Facebook or Instagram and send me a message, and we can chat through exactly where they're at, what they need. I offer free sort of 10-minute calls, a bit of a chat and a meet and greet, just to see if what they're after is something that I can help with, or we would make a good team. Because like with coaching, like we don't tell people what to do, right? It's a collaboration and a partnership essentially of evolution, working towards something.
Beautiful. So you have to have some kind of magnetism or interest in each other, really, to make a good team.
Absolutely.
To be able to encourage that for the client.
Absolutely, because when we're working with these issues, there's always going to be tears and emotions, and that's how I know that it's important to somebody. Is when they start to cry, and I'm like, and then as women apologize, and I'm like, please don't apologize, please cry and have an ugly cry if you need to. This is normal, and this is why you're here.
That's right. Let's not apologize for our tears.
No.
When we'll round things off now, but when you were speaking about how meaningful this work can be for our lives and how important it is for us as women. I felt that emotion because it means so much to me, and it means so much to me to see women being able to connect to that.
Yeah, now I'm getting
for
emotional.
Yeah.
Because it's just, of course, like for me, having experienced or, had these experiences myself, and also having, it's taken me 20 years of life and professional experience and all of this education to be able to get to a place to deliver it in a way that can actually help people. Yeah, so it makes me emotional because I'm not going to admit, it's really hard going against the grain of society and weight loss diets and coaches and when we're focusing on things like protein and it becomes out of balance and out of context and it becomes an obsession rather than a tool or a skill, then that's when, it's like, oh no. Yeah.
We're not on trend, are we, Kendall? But we are at the forefront, I believe, of what actually women are seeking when they scratch beneath the surface. That's been the feedback I've had from women.
Yeah.
So
self-love, self-compassion.
Yeah.
Have you got women who, when they actually stop and actually give themselves some love and compassion, what opens up for them?
Oh, yeah, all the time. It's like huge for them. And I think sometimes a sense of self-freedom or self-ignition in their life that they didn't know was missing. And this is even in amongst all of the perimenopause, menopause, all of that. Because if you can contextualize that for women in a way that's empowering, it no longer becomes this thing that we necessarily just want to suppress or have over and done with within a couple of months, and where yes, there are struggles, but the meaning of what we're opening up to is so powerful.
Absolutely. And you can feel and have the best life carrying a little bit of extra weight around your middle.
Well, I'm living proof of that, my friend.
Or even heaps more. Like there's no perfect model. There's just us beautiful. We should one thing just before we wrap up. And I always think one of the things that helped me was really giving appreciation for the fact that I carry 2 babies and that when they hug me, my purpose, like them hugging me, is that all they're feeling is warmth and love and squishiness and affection. They don't care what we look like.
Absolutely. And this is the inherent purpose and meaning of our body, to carry us through life, not that my belly has gotten bigger in midlife.
And we haven't even touched on how to grieve that, eh? Oh God, that's just it opens up a whole new world.
That's actually a good topic for another one.
It is, yeah.
All right, Kendall, this has been amazing. I thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll call it a day, but I feel incredibly inspired by our conversation. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Megan, for having me. I absolutely loved it. And thanks to everyone who listens.